Got a great show for you today. We have OSU versus Notre Dame coming up, talking about the inauguration and a couple other things that I think you'll find very interesting. So stay tuned for this episode of the Bill Sang Podcast. I know that there have been lots of legendary games, epic rivalries meeting up in the national championship for the past number of years now. But I don't think that anything measures up to the national championship game, regardless of the outcome that we are going to be getting on January the 20th. Ohio State University, the Ohio State University versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I hope you are as pumped up about it as what I am. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Bill Sang Podcast. I am Bill Sang, and I have a pretty full episode for you today as we're going to get caught up on some of the football stuff, only the stuff that I care about, of course, because I don't care about everything in football, just the things that matter to me, of course, but not just football, also some of the world events going on right now, American events particularly, as we look at the LA wildfires and just the insanity going on there. Looking on a book that I've just completed, another book that I have started to read. I mean, when I say completed, yes, I do write books, and I am actually in the process of writing a book, but I am not talking about that right now. I am talking about a book that I just completed and a completed reading, and another book that I've just started reading. And I tell you what, I wish that everybody could read the stuff that I read, just for the sake of the knowledge, the entertainment, all that stuff. It's exciting to be able to read different sorts of materials, and I'm having lots of fun with that right now on top of my normal studies. And one of the things that I also find to be epic and tragic and all that is the fact that the inauguration is happening on the same day as the NCAA national championship game. Who was responsible for scheduling this one? Was somebody trying to undermine the inauguration, or what exactly? I mean, you find it hard to believe that the people doing the scheduling for the national championship for NCAA football just happened to not be aware that the inauguration of the President of the United States of America was going to happen on the same day as the national championship game. I mean, my goodness, who dropped the ball on this? But nonetheless, maybe it was a strategic move, as maybe as the inauguration process is going forward. I don't remember exactly what it's like. I don't remember if there's commercials and such, but it'd be an awfully good time to catch awful lot of eyeballs to promote to them the NCAA national championship. Now, I think that most people are aware. I think that a lot of people are already going to be watching it. I don't know if they're going to get anybody who wouldn't watch it otherwise. Maybe a few eyes here and there. And of course, maybe that's exactly what they are looking for, is just a few more eyeballs on the TV screen to see their advertisement, which I don't know if they're going to. I don't remember past inaugurations if they did that. Normally, I'm busy during the inauguration, even though I do have to say I had an opportunity, because just about everywhere that I have had the opportunity to work has allowed me some degree to be able to listen to something on headphones. And I remember when Donald Trump was inaugurated that I listened to that on none other than the Rush Limbaugh show. And it was a roaring good time. You would not believe the amount of fun listening to this, frankly, boring ceremony, but not just with Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh made it great for one. He only had interjectory sort of commentary here and there. But Donald Trump, I tell you what, that man is a showman, if nothing else. And I frankly, I think that he was a great president his first term. I don't care what the people of the world think. You're not an American. If you're not an American, you don't live in America, and you do not feel the effects of the good things that Donald Trump has done for America, then I don't know what to tell you, because it's undeniable with the popular vote going in his direction the American people wanted him back, that the past 4 years were devastating economically. They're devastating from a moral standpoint. They're just devastating all around, tearing apart the foundations of our founding documents and trying to replace them with not just, when I say leftist ideology, really what we're talking about is a neo-Marxism, class warfare, pitting people against people in just so many ways that I don't even think that Karl Marx would have imagined. I mean, to the degree we are now making up classes to have war against. But as I said, the whole program's not. Oh, you know what? Before I get off of that topic, I do want to mention this, since I was mentioning about Rush Limbaugh, mentioning about Donald Trump, the inauguration, all of that. That Rush Limbaugh used to always say, the best kind of comedy, true comedy, always contains an element of truth. Babylon Bee released an article recently, within the past few days. Shameful. Activist liberal judge releases another felon onto streets of New York City. And there's a picture of the judge, Juan Merchan, or how we pronounce it. And there's a picture next to him of none other than President Donald Trump. And I find it hilarious. It's a very fun, with the mainstream left, with how they're declaring, just shouting from the rooftops how we cannot have a felon as president. A convicted felon is what they said. And now we by and large, the American people have elected Donald Trump. And the New York the justice system decided to, I can't remember the exact wording of it, more or less, they let Donald Trump go. They let him go from all the charges they are bringing against him. And again, they're illegitimate charges to begin with. Anybody that's followed it, or has not been just totally enamored and drawn in by the mainstream news narrative, could tell you that these charges are trumped up, no pun intended, and not he should not have been convicted. He should not have been charged. That it was a bunch of nonsense going on. I mean, when you have investigations going on for 4 years where there is not a formal charge, but you know what? We are investigating so that we can find that charge. That is not justice. That is not how justice works. That is not the justice system, to say that, you know what? I know you are guilty of something, and if you give me enough time, I will find it. Now, I can't remember if it was 1984 or if it was Stalin or if it was Hitler or whoever it was. And I'm not saying these names just to fire you up. But one of those people, or Mussolini or somebody, said something to the extent, maybe Lenin, I don't know, said that if you find a person, I will find the crime. I think it was Nazi Germany, maybe not Hitler, but one of his minions, so to speak. Find me the person, I'll find the crime. That's what they said, and that's a very totalitarian, evil way of conducting justice, because it is not justice. And that's what they did to Donald Trump for all those years, not just 4 years, even after he left office, they were doing that to him. And it's shameful. And, I'm proud to be in America this day to see that Donald Trump has been released. My goodness, I don't even know if I should say this out loud. I guess I'm going to have to, because I already started the thought. I hope that there's investigations into them. I hope there's lots of investigations into them. We can't let them get away with this. We've got to check out what exactly led to all these phony prosecutions, hoaxes, and so forth, and get to the bottom of why all this was happening. And the people responsible need to pay a price. And again, this isn't me lacking grace. I think that everybody can be saved by Jesus. Everybody can be forgiven. All the same, that a price legally has to be paid for the evil that has happened, the injustice that has happened inside of our country. So, Notre Dame, Ohio State, people, if you did not see the games this past, Friday, Saturday, I can't remember exactly when it was, you need to go back and watch the highlights. They are phenomenal. The 12-team college football playoff system has worked out wonderfully, because these are games. People, I am more of a fan of the NFL than the NCAA as far as football is concerned. And these were top-notch games. The Buckeyes versus Texas, it was neck and neck the whole way through. And you can tell it wasn't because these were sloppy teams. These are both elite teams playing each other. I've been calling the Texans. I keep on calling them the Texans, but rather the Texas Longhorns. The Texas Longhorns. These were both phenomenal teams. Seeing both teams' quarterbacks, both teams' offensive lines, defensive lines. It was a battle from beginning to end, and it wasn't but for a fumble on behalf of the Longhorns that the Buckeyes were able to get the final edge that they needed inside the game. The Buckeyes were winning the entire game per se. I mean, they'd score a touchdown. Texas would come back and match them with a touchdown. The Buckeyes score another touchdown. Texas would match them with another touchdown until finally the Buckeyes knocked the ball out of the hands of the quarterback and ran it all the way back for a touchdown. It was an epic ending, a beautiful ending. I am so glad that the Buckeyes were able to pull this off and make it to the national championship. So Ryan Day has in many ways been vindicated, but he's got one game left because the game on the other side was pretty good as well. Penn State versus Notre Dame. I mean, again, another incredible game. This was not a sloppy game. This was not a bad game. These were two, again, elite teams. And you know what? This matchup may not have happened. I mean, the Ohio State versus Notre Dame, but not only that, but Penn State versus Notre Dame under the previous system that existed, because you wouldn't have had these teams even maybe in the playoffs, really. With the 4-team playoff system, having the 12 teams in allowed these teams to test their skills against other teams that were more highly ranked, and they did it. They made it against each other. They played an excellent ball game. Lots of fun watching it. And Notre Dame came out on top in a very similar manner that the Buckeyes did as well. So we have these two elite teams, and I say that with an exclamation point at the end because they are elite teams playing in the national championship, probably going to be the most highly viewed national championship of all time. I tell you what, people, there were 2 teams in the house. No, I'm sorry. There was 3 teams in the house when I was growing up. 3 teams. Ohio State, that we loved. Michigan, the University of Michigan, that we hated. And Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, which were a number 2 to the Buckeyes. When I say number 2, not necessarily distant, not necessarily close, but number 2 nonetheless. A solid number 2 that nobody was going to usurp their position as number 2 inside of our house. We had the Buckeyes that we loved, Michigan that we hated, and Notre Dame that we put as a solid number 2. Now, when it came bowl game time, we always rooted Big Ten. And as the years went on, I learned of the other Big Ten teams. And we rooted Big Ten in the bowl games for the most part. Every now and then we'd have a bone of contention with Michigan, especially in the John Cooper years. Nonetheless, we still wanted the Big Ten to win those games. So people, don't miss OSU versus Notre Dame. That is going to be an awesome game. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a blowout, but this is going to be a doozy of a media affair. One way or the other. It is an event like I've never seen in football. The Buckeyes, I don't think, have ever played Notre Dame for a national championship. Maybe competed with them under one of the former systems where they never actually had to play each other, but they were simply ranked, and then a champion was declared at the end of the season based on performance. But this is something like I've never seen before, and I'm highly excited to be able to watch this game. Now, going to my first love, the Packers versus the Eagles. Disappointing, but you know what? Again, I'm going to be a Packers fan, and I'm going to say there's next year. The Packers got a young team, and against all the good teams, they've played really well. The Eagles, the least of which. They didn't do their best against the Eagles, but nonetheless, it was still a competitive game for the most part. I mean, Packers lost by 11 points, I think it was, something like that. And their performance throughout the season has been progressively getting better until the Chicago Bears. And that's kind of where I think that things kind of dropped off for them. I don't think they had the steam coming into this one to have a good performance. After they lost to the Bears, I thought to myself, oh boy, we're in for a rough ride. Had they lost to the Bears and even still be seated where they were and play the Eagles, I think they would have fared a lot better. They would have had the momentum going into it. The Eagles are hot. The Commanders are hot. The Buccaneers are hot. The Commanders beat the Buccaneers. So watch out for those Commanders. I am curious to see what happens with the Commanders the rest of this playoff because, again, they're a team that's hot. The Lions moved into the postseason hot as well, and they've been hot all season. So look out for those Lions. And the Vikings, we'll see what they do. We'll see what the Vikings do tonight. Who is it they're playing again? I'm trying to think of who the Vikings are playing. They're playing one of those. Let me see here real fast. Who Vikings? Who are you playing in your next game? Minnesota Vikings. Okay, guys, who are you playing? You're playing the Rams. That's why I keep on forgetting. I never think twice about the Rams. But they're playing the Rams. And this is going to be, by the way, I'm recording this on Monday night, so if it doesn't get released till later, 8 o'clock on Monday night. So by the time you hear this, we're probably already going to have the outcome of that game. So I'm excited to see exactly who it is that comes out on top between the Vikings and the Rams. Exciting time of the year, especially since we got the NCAA championship on the 20th of January, and then I don't know when exactly, but then you have the Super Bowl coming up shortly afterwards. So I always love seeing the outcomes of these games, seeing who comes out on top. These are top-notch athletes, and I love watching them. On the AFC side, I have to touch on the AFC side real fast. People, my prediction, to my chagrin, is it's going to be the Eagles and it's going to be the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been a juggernaut all season. I know people have said, yeah, they've just kind of edged out all these other teams and they got blown out by the Commanders. Yeah, but no, not the Commanders, the Broncos. But that was more incidental. They put in all their third stringers. They didn't have anybody playing against them. And, you know, a win's a win, even if it's by 1 point. And if you beat every team by 1 point, can people say you're not the best? If you beat every team by 1 point, I think that's significant. So you got the Chiefs, you got the Bills, you got the Ravens. The Ravens had a great performance against the Steelers. And Lamar Jackson, he looked good. We'll see how he looks the rest of the postseason. It'll be interesting. I'm more of an NFC guy myself, so I can't tell you a whole lot about what's going on in the AFC. I don't really care a whole lot about what's going on in the AFC. I think, you know, to me, it looks like, as I said, I think that the Chiefs will make it to the Super Bowl. The Bills will contest them on that. And the Ravens aren't going to go down without a fight. So exciting time of the year to be a football fan. LA Wildfires. LA Wildfires. So I'm just going to touch on this real fast. This is the thing about the media today. You don't know what to believe. And with social media, all the more. And you know what? That's not even a complaint against social media. I think people throwing out their ideas on social media are a good thing. That we need these things on social media to help direct us. So, I mean, yeah, I think that social media, you know, it drives me crazy when people say, I wish we'd go back to the days of Walter Cronkite. All these media outlets, they praise foreign media outlets for being streamlined, for having one opinion, for not allowing other thoughts, theories, and opinions into the news cycle for the sake that, well, we got to protect the sanctity of the truth. Wait. If you are controlling what you want people to believe is true and what isn't, that's not good. In fact, I've been listening over the course of days. I don't listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, but over the course of days, I've been listening to an interview that he had with Mel Gibson. I was a fan of Mel Gibson back in the day. I still like Mel Gibson. I think that they did him absolutely rotten when it comes to his reputation in this weak moment, and lots of other factors going into that people are not willing to forgive, that really we should be willing to forgive. I mean, he said some dumb things. Nonetheless, they were recounting the days of COVID, of because Joe Rogan, he was using, I think, ivermectin, and he said he was getting results from it. And the media started saying he was using horse heart dewormer, and that he was promoting that. And well, it is used for that, but it was first used on humans and first patented for humans before it was patented also for animal use. And so like listening to them and Joe Rogan, he is sort of the number one alternative media outlet out there. He's got the biggest podcast in America, maybe in the world, I don't know. So I mean, he's somebody worth taking seriously, and hearing them recount these things. Where am I going with all this as far as the Los Angeles wildfires? All sorts of theories, all sorts of information that fire insurance was taken away from houses before this happened. The mayor wasn't in town, which I think was actually true. The fire hydrants had no water in them. All these things that line up to make you say, "Wow, are these people horribly incompetent or just horribly malevolent?" And I don't know the answer. I mean, that level of incompetence should make us ask, is this intentional? And if we don't ask that question, we're not doing our job as people. I think that we need to know who's in charge, and if they are malevolent, get them out of there. We need to get malevolent leadership out of office. We do not want that in our system of government, the way we elect people, that we need to make sure that things stay pure in terms of not wickedness. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest concerns. I mean, all these people, I mean, LA of all places, one of the big theories is this is groundwork for the Great Reset. At the beginning of the Trump administration, I don't know what exactly the strategy for that would be. I mean, don't let people tell you that the Great Reset is just a conspiracy theory. It is something that the people at the global level of government actually want. They want to restructure the world into a one world government and have it governed in a like manner across the board. I think that's bad. National sovereignty is good. The states that we have, state governments in America are good. Local governments we have in America are good. We do not need a centralized authority telling us what to do, save God Himself. God Himself is our central authority, not human beings. And the closer we get to home with our government, the better it's going to be in a manner of speaking. Because at least with the local government, if they're bad, you can leave. With the state government, if they're bad, you can leave. Well, what do you do when your federal government's bad? Well, we see what happens with all these people crossing the border. Not that all of them are genuine, authentic, and just trying to seek a better life. Lots of them are. Most of them are, by and large. But you know, we also have seen that not all of them are good people. But that's what happens when governments go bad at the national level. Is that people start to flee the country. We don't have people in America fleeing to Mexico and fleeing to Canada, except for the actors and actresses fleeing for the sake of Donald Trump getting elected. And even then, they're doing it luxuriously. They're not like sneaking out of the country like they are announcing their citizenship publicly and flying out in big airliners and starting a new life in a mansion somewhere else where they're doing the exact same job that they used to do. They aren't having to scrape like these people coming over our border are. But that's another topic for another day right there. I want to talk about just a few more things here before we close out because I've been doing a fair amount of reading lately. I mean, it's funny because most of my reading has to do with pastoral stuff and studying and things like that. But then I get to read a little bit on my own, and to me, it is a little bit educational in different sorts of ways. One of the things I read, and I started reading it back when I used to work for Marathon Petroleum Corporation, lots of foreign workers and stuff, and one of my friends there was Indian, and so I started reading the Bhagavad Gita. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Hindu, happened to mispronounce the name of this writing. She called it the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavad Gita. It's Bhagavad Gita. That's the way that my friend told me it's pronounced. I thought it was Bhagavad Gita. He said Bhagavad Gita. Okay, B-H-A, I might get the spelling wrong to tell the truth, but there's a V there that I guess is supposed to sound like a W. And I finished reading that, and it was a fascinating read from beginning to end. I mean, it's a story about this guy, and I'm going to get the names wrong. I'm bragging about pronouncing Bhagavad Gita correctly, but there's a guy named Arjuna, I think his name is, and then Krishna, which is an incarnation, like an avatar of the Hindu god, one of the Hindu gods, or the supreme Hindu god, or whatever. And they're having a conversation because Arjuna is a warrior, and he doesn't want to go to war because he's going to be fighting against friends, he's going to be fighting against family, and he feels like more evil is going to come out of that than good, even if they win. And so Krishna is going through this book and through this writing and telling him that it's his duty, and basically giving him the way of enlightenment throughout this story. And it's an interesting story. And as I read it, like I see parts in there that uses language very reminiscent of what the Old Testament Bible has said, and maybe to some degree the New Testament as well. And I'm thinking, where is this coming from? I mean, at one point, the I think Krishna even refers to himself as I am. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? Well, I did a little bit of research, and this can be contestable. I get it. There's disputes on when the Bhagavad Gita was written. Scholars seem to think between 400 and 200 BC. Now, why is that significant? Those writings happened after, well after, the entirety of the Old Testament was written. And I find that fascinating. My theory on this is that certain theological concepts from the Old Testament, because, I mean, King David and King Solomon, their influence spread so far throughout the world because they had all these trading relationships with people, that I'm curious as to whether that their influence actually infiltrated the Indian world, and that even the biblical God, that even certain language of his existence crept into Hindu theology. Now, mind you, I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Hinduism is the same as Christianity, as Judaism, or anything like that. Not by a long shot. So different. Lots of similar values, I will say that. But in terms of who God is, of how you attain salvation, very, very different. They're very much works based. The so-called Trinity, they referred, I think they may refer to it as Trinity inside of the book, which I think some of this language too is from modern writers trying to relate with their audience, so using language that we're familiar with. But I don't know. I don't speak Hindi or whatever it was written in, so I can't tell you. But I read it in English, of course. And but I remember hearing that some Hindus will say that they have a Trinity just like we do. No, they do not. They have three different gods, and to go deeper into theology, some people will say, not all Hindus, but some Hindus will say that these are just manifestations of the supreme God. I want to, I don't want to say the name and get it wrong, because I think it's Vishnu, Shiva or Shiva, and Brahman. I think those are three gods, and I think that Brahman is the supreme God, and I think that the teaching is that those three are manifestations of Brahman. And that's not how our theology is in our Trinity. The way we believe is, and by the way, I'm also reading a book by Wayne Grudem, Systematic Theology. First time I've been through it. And well, as a whole, read a smaller version of it before, which is beautiful that Grudem did that. And inside of it, that they explain the theology of the Trinity. And the Trinity is so different, so unique, that they're not three manifestations of the same God. They're three persons of the same God. That Jesus is God, the Holy Spirit is God, and the Father is God. But Jesus is not the Son is not the Father. The Father is not the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is not the Son. And so it's a very, very complicated construct to the degree that our minds actually cannot grasp it. Where in Hinduism, it's a lot more of a graspable concept, that they are manifestations of one God. And that is actually heretical when it comes to Christian theology. So, hey, you learned something today about Christian theology. If you're not a Christian, or if you are a Christian, the difference between, say, because I've heard, I have a Jehovah's Witness friend that would say that the Trinity is actually found in pagan theology, and he's probably referring to things like in Hinduism. No, it's totally, totally different in that regard. I don't understand the Holy Trinity inside of Christianity. I believe in the Holy Trinity of Christianity, but I will never be able to wrap my mind around it in its entirety. Don't get me wrong. There are elements of it that I do understand, and there are certain illustrations that we can use in nature to characterize it, but not as many as what people like. Water, not a good illustration. Water, ice, and vapor, not a good illustration. It gives you an idea, but it's not a good illustration. 3-leaf or 4-leaf, whatever it is. 3-leaf clover, not a good illustration. But nonetheless, you can still use those to communicate the Trinity to people of how things can be three and yet one, but they do not communicate the nature of God perfectly. Not going to get into the illustration I would use, but if you want to talk personally about it, then I can give you that illustration, and it will make a lot of sense actually how three persons can be one being. So, and that's very fascinating. So I finished reading the Bhagavad Gita. It is very educational, very interesting. Help me to understand why there's overlap in values between Christianity and Hinduism, even though they are vastly, vastly different religions altogether. Christianity does not have a caste system. We regard the highest person, the most wealthy, high status person, as much as what we regard the lowest, poorest, most broken down person that you can imagine. That they all have equal value, and we are all one and all united through Jesus Christ. I'm going to wrap it up in here in just 1 minute. Right now, I started reading another book, though, that is a long time coming. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is way, way older than this other book that I'm reading, but I started reading Monster by Frank Peretti. Whew, I'm not very far into it, but it's sending chills right down my spine. I'll have to tell you a little bit more about it in the future. But my, oh my, right now I am on the edge of my seat reading it. They're out in the wilderness. There's a monster of some sort, or monsters is what it sounds like, of some sort out in the wilderness. I've read reviews and stuff that give ideas about what it's all about, so I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Monster by Frank Peretti. Lots of fun to read right now, and I can't wait to make it all the way through that book. But aside from that, doing lots of other studies. In fact, I'm excited about this week's sermon. This is what I'm going to close on. This week's sermon, I'm going to be doing a Sanctity of Life sermon, since it's Sanctity of Life Sunday. So if you need somewhere to go to church, you want to hear the message, or even have questions about the sanctity of human life, as it's just been horribly devalued in our culture, not just through, it's something that hasn't really changed a whole lot from the time the Democrats have held office and the Republicans have held office. I think that we made some headway under Donald Trump's last administration. I don't know what it's going to look like now, but Sanctity of Life Sunday, this Sunday, join us at Finley Grace Brethren Church to check that out. My name is Bill Sang, and this is the Bill Sang Podcast. Be blessed. I'm out on a crossroad and I'm feeling so alone.